And welcome everyone to God's Views on Political News. It's so great to have you here today. Bill, you're looking chipper.
I am? Oh, okay. I'm
Only thing
good.
I could think to say.
Glad to know that. Well, it's nice outside here. Cool breeze, cool temperatures. It's nice time to be in Tennessee. Other places, I'm not so certain.
Yeah, like California maybe, perhaps.
Just saying.
Just saying. I know. Well, we're seeing people come in. Dawn's coming in on Facebook, and Karen from Periscope. Hi, everybody. Glad that you're here with us. We have a lot to talk about today. We're anxious to see your comments, hear your question. Alan is saying hello over there on Facebook as well. So let's get started, Bill. Dawn wants to let you know that it's rainy in Georgia. So I'm imagining all of that rain is going to go to Tennessee.
It's coming this way tomorrow.
Heads up.
It's coming this way, and then it's going to get cold after the rain passes through. But, it's end of October, 1st of November. It's supposed to be that way.
It's going to be a little cold here. It's like 70 something today. So, a little chilly.
70 something. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. It's an Arctic blast right there.
Exactly. Now, Karen said, stop bragging, Bill. I woke up to snow. Marlene said, hello, everyone. So, yeah.
I'm not ready for snow yet. Yeah.
Well, you never know what's going to happen.
I want a little more fall before we get into that. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's
Clark
not my husband.
Griswold by chance?
Almost. It should be. Dan says, shalom from Arkansas. Hello, California needs rain. Cindy said, 14 degrees here, Alan said. Woo, okay.
Where's that out? Where's that?
Alan's in Iowa, I think, if I have that right.
14. No, I'm not ready for that.
What are those I states? Yeah. And Marlene is 90s in Florida. Famous last words, still warm in North Carolina. And Candace says hello to us both, Candace Middleton. And it's 63 in Arizona. And
really?
Karen's,
wow.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Kathy said, hi, all wanting to move to Tennessee. We just need jobs and we are on our way. So, Kathy, would that be because of Jacob's tent that you're wanting to move to Tennessee?
Well, Tennessee's a great place, but you better know what you're doing and make sure God's telling you to move. That's all I'll say to that.
Exactly.
But if you do, we're here.
Like the one Democrat said, we wouldn't want to have everybody move to one place and have everything tilt, right? Remember the Democrat who was talking about an island was going to do?
Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, if you come to Tennessee, just be a Tennessean. That's all we ask.
For sure, y'all. Okay, and then Darlene said, hi, Bill and Susan, and Alan is in Idaho, not Iowa. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, that makes sense then.
And Kathy is from Washington State, 17 here in Steamboat, Sudi said. So, and Kathy, yes, wants to move there because of Jacob's tent. So, we'll see how many people move to Tennessee. I think it's going to be Tennessee it's going to have to secede and get a West Tennessee or an East Tennessee or something.
Well, don't even get me started on that now.
Well, and then
I'm sorry.
No, it's going to be interesting because some of the Republicans are looking at that and saying, I was sorry. I looked at Luann. I thought she sold her home and she's moving to Texas. I thought she was going to say Tennessee for a moment. I was going to say, oh my gosh, it's another one heading to Texas. It just caught me by surprise.
Well, it's the other T state, so.
Yeah, exactly. So, but what I was going to say with them is that, some Republicans are saying, well, look, this just proves that you didn't have a proper impeachment inquiry going. And now you're going to try to do something proper.
After the fact.
Exactly.
And they seem to be, backtracking on that all the time. I mean, don't seem like they've committed to anything other than trying to figure out a way to get Trump out of office. So I guess if it comes down on Thursday, they'll see who's going to vote which way. I mean, I think it's just going to go right along party lines. But if they do.
Yeah, probably so. And I think this is one of the things that Nancy feels that maybe her peers will go along with, even though those that are sort of up for reelection and wondering how this is really going to affect them for going forward with impeachment when most people are saying this is stupid, don't do it, turn around. The Democrats are even saying that.
Right.
But I think she feels that she can get them to agree to impeachment inquiry.
Do something. But, I saw somebody make the comment that, if they do have a vote, basically that puts everybody on record and Trump wins. And that if they vote and she doesn't get the votes that she wants to impeach, then Trump wins. And if it goes to the Senate, it's they're not going to remove him from office in the Senate, and either way Trump wins, and it backfires on all of them. And I tend to agree. It's just that in the meantime, it's holding the country hostage. They haven't, that I'm aware of, they haven't come up with one piece of legislation, much less meaningful legislation, that helps the nation. They've been Habini subpoenas, though. That's
yes. But here's something, Bill, and I think this will interest you. There's a resolution, HR, I don't know, whatever, by Lowenthal, I believe is his name, Representative Lowenthal. He's from a Democrat from California, because that goes against what the Bible says.
Well, there's many other people who've written about this, spoken about this through the years, and that is basically that when we as a nation push Israel into a corner, whether it's a two-state solution or giving back Gaza, all these different things, whenever we push them and put them in an untenable position or a vulnerable position, then there's something happens here, whether it's a natural phenomena or there's a political upheaval or what have you. And I'm convinced that when we as a nation, whether it's Pelosi or Obama or whoever, when we push those kinds of things, the Creator pushes back. Now, a lot of people in that world wouldn't recognize it, wouldn't believe that, but it doesn't change the fact that he pushes back and he sends this little message: you better quit. You're doing stuff like that. So yeah, I agree. If Lowenthal, and let me just go out on a limb and guess he's Jewish, if they're going to push something like that, then that just gives me great confidence that something's about to blow up in their face.
Yeah. And Darlene said that Representative Jim Jordan said that they're trying to move it. The Democrats are trying to move the impeachment inquiry to a different committee, trying to keep them out still and waste all the work previously done. And that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, we've done everything the Dems have in a basement, in secret, and they probably have come up with not very much. And so they'll want to do away with all of that. We're not even talking about the whistleblower anymore. So we'll try to get, we'll just forget about the whistleblower that sort of started all of this.
No, we're going to talk about the military.
Lay it all out there. You find out that guy was connected over here to Ukraine. He knows Burisma. He's this, he's that. It's amazing. They're all connected with each other.
Yeah. Well, I honestly think some of them have lost it and really haven't. Yeah. They've told me so many lies and made so many shady deals, they can't keep up with it all. And I think, and kind of hope that what they've been doing, this noose that they've been, forming and fashioning, they're making it long enough just to hang themselves.
Well,
and I say that metaphorically.
Metaphorically, of course. Give them enough rope and they'll metaphorically hang themselves.
Yeah.
Yes. And here's the thing. I talked about this a little earlier on another show today. There's a guy named Amos Hochstein. And the Republicans are wondering, why isn't this guy even being talked to? Why are we not hearing his name? Why are they not bringing him in as part of their little secret hearings or opening it up to the public? Now, let me just tell you a little bit about him, and then this will throw some more into the mix. This may have been part of the what you were talking about a minute ago. He allegedly relayed President Zelensky from Ukraine his concern is that Giuliani would try and coerce him to get involved, meaning Zelensky, to get involved in the 2020 election. And Hochstein was, so disturbed by that he gave the information to Fiona Hill, who was at one time the White House top European official at one time. She then relayed that information to John Bolton, supposedly. Mm. And we find out that this guy Hochstein he served under, here we go, that Biden had with Poroshenko, but claims, oh my gosh, I never heard him talk at all about Burisma.
But he heard something else over here from the phone call that where the transcript was. You know, it's like a scene from the movie JFK when the guy talks about this is a secret wrapped in an enigma, concealed in a mystery. You know, it just keeps getting more bizarre by the moment. You find out all these different people, how it's interconnected. If the truth ever does come to light one day, and I pray that it does, it's going to be so far-reaching and go so deep. I guarantee you, we've only seen the tip of the iceberg.
Well, I think we've only seen the tip of the iceberg. And as I tell people, I don't think that we're ever going to really see the bottom of the swamp, because it's so deep and it keeps going and there's no end to it. So when you get rid of these people here, it's going to uncover something else over here. And it's just piling on top of each other. And it's an endless pit is what it is. And
unfortunately, I would probably agree with you on that. But it's like, you know, and I don't want to get off topic or get ahead of ourselves here, but it's just like, you know, ISIS or Al-Qaeda. You take out the head and somebody's always ready to step into the vacuum. You take out that group, somebody's always ready to raise up another group over here. And so it is like that a lot. You know, you're going to potentially, you know, Barr is going to uncover some things. It's going to expose some people. And if they did wrong, they need to pay the consequence. But I'm sure that it's like you said, it's so deep, it's so rampant, and it's so deeply entrenched in that DC culture. There's always going to be somebody, you know, in the wings ready to step into place. However, I will add this little caveat. If what we're seeing
pull down, you know, I don't know if you heard recently, Representative, you know, Katie Hill, that whole thing with her and representative from California, and she was told,
shocker, anyway,
shocker, I know, but she's a victim because, you know, her photos were put out there, not other people who have affairs and stuff like that, or their photos are out. So she's a, you know, a Me Too victim type thing. But Nancy, you know, here's all of this. Nancy, what she's doing, going after impeachment, is the only thing that they're focused on, and what's happening around them. You know, the representatives are falling apart. You know, Darlene said the impeachment inquiry is nothing more than an attempt to hang Trump for the crime of investigating Biden. Why do people think he jumped into the race to begin with? He isn't spending a lot of money. He's protecting himself. The Dems knew Giuliani was poking around and knew about Burisma. Yeah, it makes all sense. Yeah. It really does.
Yeah, I think they're all trying to cover because everybody's interconnected. These are all buddies. They're pals. They get together at night and have cocktail parties, you know, and I throw Republicans in that as well. So, yeah, there's no telling what's going to be uncovered here if it in fact gets uncovered. And I say this, it seems like every week, but every week it just validates it more and more for me. Donald Trump, because he's in that office, he is to the deep state, the progressives, the liberals, the political establishment. He is to them what Jerusalem is to the nations. God uses him to expose these things, the craziness and just the vast corruption. And that is not to make him a saint. That's just to say that God is using him in that way. So, you know, back to the Katie Hill, is that her name? This young congresswoman. Here, okay, so Pelosi says you got to go. You're making us all look bad. Here's what I hear in that. You didn't cover your tracks like everybody else, you know, and you're kind of getting, you know, you're getting some bad publicity and press here, and it's, you know, we're you know, it's kind of getting too close to home. Now, I'm not saying Nancy Pelosi did the same things. I'm just saying these are the kind of people who are getting elected. You know, they do these awful things, ungodly things, immoral things, and well, you know, I'm imperfect. Never said I was perfect. No.
Today, there are allegations that he tried to basically pay somebody off, another senator off, to get something for one of the lobbyists, basically. And the senator happened to be a representative, I don't know which one, was wearing a wire, and they've got it all on tape.
Don't these guys watch The Untouchables? I mean, come on.
I know. And it's like, don't you know that we're trying, you know, that all this corruption is being uncovered? Haven't you watched TV at all? I bet you know that. And they continue to do it because they can't help themselves. It's a power driven type thing that they have done for eons. And now that Trump is here and God is uncovering things, everybody's being found out, even when they've been doing it forever and ever.
Well, and that, to me, Susan, explains why they're so obsessed with impeachment.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just convinced of it, that they were looking for something in the Russia thing, the Mueller thing. When's the last time you heard that name? After 2 years. They were hoping to find something, and so they think they've got something to go on. They are obsessed with impeachment because they need to get him out of there, because he's going to, or his administration is going to uncover things they don't want to uncover. I heard Schiff say something to the effect that, in Barr investigating all these things as far as the origins of this collusion hoax and all these things, that it's well, my terminology, I forget exactly what he said, but it's an illegitimate investigation. Here's the guy that's holding secret meetings in the basement of the Capitol, but he's saying that the Attorney General, the Attorney General of the United States, is leading an illegitimate Trump's legal team.
Trey Gowdy, yeah, Trump's legal team.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So we'll have to wait and see with that. But talking about impeachment and all, it just goes to show you too. Here, Trump goes in, he kills al-Baghdadi, right? He blows him away. Well, we'll talk about that in a second. And the Democrats and Nancy can't even come out and say what a great job this president did. I mean, this is one of the biggest terrorists of all times, and ISIS, and al-Baghdadi, the leader of that. We got rid of him. And it's like, okay, well, back to impeachment. But we have an impeachment to do. Let's go. Well,
I think they kind of they didn't even do that. They criticized because he didn't call Nancy up and let her know. Of course, I kind of heard it secondhand, but I did hear something along the lines that they said, well, there'd been too many leaks among the Democrats. That's why they didn't let him know. Which that seems pretty. That's common sense. That's wise,
reasonable.
I think. Right, reasonable. There you go. But I think we need to make sure, to acknowledge that Trump acknowledged the people who did the job. These people who went in and were in harm's way, and even this German Shepherd, the dog. And so he was right to praise the people who were part of this. It's a good thing that Al Big Daddy is not around with us anymore. That his twisted mind can no longer come up with ways to torture people that are different from him. So, and the fact that Trump used some graphic terminology and I would even say a little taunting as far as ISIS and these terrorists concerned didn't bother me any. I don't know why we need to pay respect to someone who had no respect for human life. I'm not going to gloat and, display glee over anybody, that has to go now meet their maker, because that's a very ominous thing. And all of us are going to have to do that. But I'm not going to, say, well, we should have shown respect to this guy for this, that, and the other. He blew himself up.
You mean a guy that beheaded people
right.
and our military people. And raped and burned people to death? You mean that guy?
Yeah, that guy.
Well, but see, the Hollywood types, like Jamie Lee Curtis, she was like telling the president yesterday, oh my gosh, this poor guy, he suffered, even though you don't like him, he suffered. And myself and others reminded her, well, he suffered by his own hands because he blew himself up. And not only that, but he blew up 3 of his children that he took with him, probably using them as shields would be my guess, as he's running away from the dog.
Well, that's what bin Laden did when he went down. He had, he had other people in front of him using them as human shields. That seems to be the trend.
He had women in front of him.
It seems to be the trend, with some of these guys. They're, in the Gaza and the so-called West Bank, people in Hamas have been known to strap explosives to kids and to women to send them, to murder innocent people. So that seems to be the trend in that way of thinking there.
Now, one of the things that I talked about a little earlier when this morning when I was on doing something else, was talking about, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but some of the concerns, see how genius that plan was, and also to know that the SDF, which they're Kurds, right? So these Kurds that we supposedly abandoned over there, they're the ones that helped us find where Baghdadi was so that we could go over there and get him. And it's also funny, don't you think, that as soon as we withdrew, quote unquote, 28 people from that area of Syria, that's where al-Baghdadi was, and that's where we went in and got him.
Well, there's a lot of things that we don't know.
Yes.
And, I know a lot of people like to play armchair quarterback. And I mean, I guess that's what we do too here to some extent. But
Yeah,
there's things that the president knows that we don't,
of course.
you
Yeah.
know, and some of those things he knows, I'm glad I don't know. But, it's not in what he says, it's in what he does that has convinced me that, we need to support this president.
Yeah.
And so when you've got Pelosi and Schiff going over to Jordan, and then this legislation is being introduced that we just mentioned earlier that Pelosi is going to get behind about a two-state solution, and then, this going on with al-Baghdadi and all, it's like, I can't help but think all of these things are interconnected somehow or the other. And so there's a lot of, you said not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but we have to acknowledge that there are conspiracies in this world.
Absolutely.
And Psalm 83 refers to that fact that there are those who raise their... I still don't know all the facts. I know what I hear, what I read. You did some research on it. I don't know everything. But the fact that the Kurds were very instrumental in helping the U.S. locate this guy and take him out, it's hard for me to reconcile that with that they're feeling all abandoned and everything, and particularly if it's, 25, 30 people we're talking about here?
Yeah, yeah. And not only that, but it's come out, Esper was talking to the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, was talking about how, there's oil right there where we left, right? There's oil in that Syria, in that region. We're bringing our people kind of back in there to protect the oil and allow the SDF, the Kurds, to use that oil for what they need to do and protecting, guarding ISIS and guarding against ISIS coming back and use for their own benefit. That doesn't sound like to me that we've betrayed the Kurds and that the Kurds were all upset and people got killed and, on and on and on. Again, I think there's so much more about this that we don't know and we may never know.
Yeah, and let me say this, I'll go on record. I'm no fan of Erdogan either. Even though Turkey's part of NATO, this guy's a despot, he's a tyrant, and I don't really know, I don't know how that's all going to turn out. But I'm going to give the president the benefit of the doubt in these matters because he has information that I do not have. And then when he pulls the trigger on well, my mind just went blank on this sending our guys in there to take this guy out. That's a good thing. When you cut off the head of ISIS, it'll wither and die. Now, granted, there'll be some other radicals that rise up in the region, but as long as we have someone who is willing to call the shots and say we're going to get these guys and we're going to do everything we can to do it, and they know that that's probably what's going to happen, or a very good chance, that might keep some of them at bay. I mean, this guy must have thought that he was being searched for because he had an explosive vest. I mean, I don't just keep one of those lying around. So, something will happen. I'm like, well, maybe that's why he was doing that. Maybe that's why he was saying that, because, I didn't have all the information. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt in that. And again, it seems to me that if the Kurds were the ones who helped us pinpoint where this guy was, that doesn't seem like they're some jaded lover. It seems like they're still cooperating with one another.
And, we were also talking about yesterday, WAPO, they sent out their headlines was that, al-Baghdadi was an austere religious leader. And, and they had to change that later on because people just, said, okay, that's really Now you've gone way too far. But a columnist today from WAPO said that al-Baghdadi didn't die a coward because instead of being captured, he blew himself and 3 children up instead. So,
Okay, well,
so
that was
I mean,
that was Max Boot, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Well,
yes. Whew, Max needs to get the boot, if
yeah.
you know what I mean.
Right. Well, he's probably in pretty safe territory if he's with the Washington Post. But anyway, look, al-Baghdadi and ISIS was a creation of Obama, indirectly perhaps, but I'm not so certain that it was even indirect. I think it was, given opportunity for something like that to germinate and, right conditions cultivated, and it led to those kinds of things. And he played patty cake with them as far as trying to get rid of them. He couldn't do this, couldn't do that, And so I think ISIS and all that was an Obama creation. Maybe he was even Dr. Frankenstein and this was the monster. But to call this man some austere religious leader, he was a thug. He was a murderer. He was a rapist.
Was a terrorist.
Yeah, it was all these things.
Yes.
And he it's kind of like when you're in the ministry, and fortunately, I've never had to be in this situation, but I know ministers that have been called upon to preach a funeral. And they have to go and preach a funeral for someone who was an absolute heathen. They were a wife beater or a drunk, this, that, and the other, and then they've got to go preach them into heaven. And they got to say nice things, but not get too close to the truth of the matter. And so one day I had this friend of mine. He's a pastor, and he had to do that very same thing. Well, he went in there and he just called it like it is in front of everybody, So that's what we need to do here. This guy was a murderer. He was a rapist. He was a terrorist. He was a thug. He will stand before God and answer for all of those hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people that he, like Hitler before him, was responsible for their deaths and for their butchery. That's what he is. And he decided to pull the vest and blow himself to bits and go see Allah. He got a big shocker when he woke up.
Yeah, absolutely. Now Darlene said he wasn't a believer in being killed by that would have replaced him most likely. He's been taken out too. So
so ISIS is looking really hard for somebody to take over now. Anybody want the job?
I know. They'll have to get children next to do that. And, don't think that someday they won't, because, they're running out of people. They're running out of people also who are in line to be these people who go and blow other people up by wearing the vest and walking up to them, whatever. They're starting to use children. I mean, it's crazy. And the world is crazy. And you expect that type of behavior, I guess, from terrorists. And Danielle said, give them Bergdahl. So.
Yeah. Well, that was Obama. Yeah. Anyway.
Yes.
Golda Meir said something many years ago, and it's related. It's not the exact set of circumstances, but it speaks to the point. And she said that there would never be peace in the Middle East until, maybe she used the term Palestinians, but I'll just say the radical Muslim element in the Middle East. There will never be peace in the Middle East until they love their children more than they hate us. Wow. And that, to me, is the core issue. And if you think about it, Susan, and it's apples and oranges, but there's not going to be any peace in this nation until the people who are on the left, the progressives and the Marxists, either are vanquished, politically speaking, socially, culturally, and or until they love this country more than they hate Trump and what is behind Trump, and that is people who want a constitutional republic. And what's behind that? People who want a moral, a law-abiding society based on biblical principle. And until they get to that place, there's never
between Israel and the United States. I mean, Israel doesn't have a government right now. We have chaos in our government thanks to Congress. I think, Israel is so vulnerable right now because of the fact that they don't have a government. What if, somebody attacks them at this point? What if people come down from, let's say, I don't know, Syria, and attack them at this point? Iran is trying to once again, and they've never stopped, but I mean, they're once again, it seems like they're
concerned. The scriptures, the prophets make it very clear that there is going to be a day when Israel, the people of Israel, will look to the God of Israel solely as their source for protection, for prosperity. And the things that they've relied upon up until that point in time will fail them. The people that they've relied upon, and I would include the United States in this, at some point will fail them. And the only one who will not will be the God of Israel, and he will save them. And I want to make sure everyone understands that when I say Israel, by extension, I'm including all of God's people wherever they are. It's just that things, in the land of Israel, it's the focal point. And everything's going to, kind of come back to that. So then, in a similar way, I think what's going on in our nation right now is that, yes, we believe, we're hopeful that the hand of God is at work, and a lot of this chaos that's going on right now is because the adversary is resisting, he's responding to what God is doing. But it doesn't change the fact that there's a lot of chaos right now. And in many ways, we're vulnerable as well. And so that means the God lot, and it almost becomes a cliche, but it is the reality of where we're at right now. And one other thing I want to add to that, as it relates to the United States, and then I'll go back to Israel. I said from the very beginning of Trump's presidency that there was no guarantee that the things that he was doing that we like and we approve of and we endorse and encourage are going to remain intact. Because if we as God's people in this land don't turn our hearts back to God, then there's going to be another president who's going to come in. And I believe it will be worse than what was prevented from going into the White House this last time. And by the way, she's pondering whether or not she needs to get in this race. And it's based on this biblical principle. When an unclean spirit goes out of a man or a house, if you will, he'll wander for a while looking for rest and find none, but then he's going to go back to the place that he came out of. And if he finds that there's nothing in it, if there's nothing good in it, that's his invitation to move back in. But this time, he's going to go get 7 of his friends who are more wicked than he is, and they're all going to move in. And the implication there is we're not going to get kicked out anymore. That's what's going on in this country right now. That's where we're at. And so if we don't do what we're supposed to do on our knees first, then what we do in the ballot box isn't going to matter too much, to be honest with you, not long term anyway. So we really need to, we don't need to assume, as others have, that there's going to be a Trump landslide 2020. Yeah. We don't need to assume that. We don't need to assume that we're going to take the House. We don't need to assume that we're going to hold on to the, militarily speaking, one of the most innovative, technologically advanced militaries in the world, one of the premier militaries in the world. And sometimes, it's been my observation anyway, that the average Israeli doesn't worry too much about these kinds of things because there's the IDF to lean upon, or there's the United States. They'll come in, they'll back us up, they'll stand by us, Well, if the United States is in such a chaotic state, how can we do these kinds of things? And when you've got the Nancy Pelosi, the stage is being set.
Yes.
The stage is being set for all of these things to come to pass. And that the common denominator that we have with Israel is we are 2 unique nations in all the history of the world. And that is that one nation, Israel, was invited to come into covenant with God by God. The other, the United States, invited God to come into covenant with us, and he did. And God doesn't forget those things, and he holds us accountable for those things. So he's orchestrating things to get his people to see, I'm the only one you can trust. I'm the only one you can depend upon, so you better look to me.
And absolutely. And I know we say it a lot, but people need to constantly pray and pray for this president, pray for this country, pray for each other. It is more, we should always pray, but I think it's even more because of where we are in end times, even more crucial that we pray now, because the evil that we are seeing, that we see every day in the news, the evil that we see around us is becoming so, I want to say, I don't want to use the word great, but it is becoming so great and so thick and so prevalent that putting on the full armor of God and praying, that is the full armor of God, is what we need and must do in order to get through these times and be the remnant that God has here now to help during these times.
Well, let me tag something on to say, you need to just prostrate yourself before God and appeal to mercy. And it's in this context in Joel, is because there's an adversary, there's an enemy. He describes them, or he likens them to locusts. They are coming to destroy you. They are coming to try to eradicate you. And so wail between the porch and the altar, he says. Now, I won't go into all the details of it because I don't want to take up the whole program talking about this, but I will tell you that biblically speaking, and that's what locusts do. They devour, they chew, they destroy everything that sustains life, everything that's conducive to life, because it's all about eradicating, dying, corruption, destruction. So that's the context of Joel, and that's what we have going on here in the United States. That's what we have going on in Israel. It's going on all over the world. But it's God's people that he's trying to wake up. That's why he says in Joel chapter 2, blow the trumpet in Zion, sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Hey, wake up, everybody, because this is what's happening. And, I'm just going to share my opinion. Donald Trump, it's like the Creator is saying, wake up. We're sounding the trumpet, I'm not saying that the man's a saint. I'm not saying that he is anything a Messiah type. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying he is God's man for this hour, and even more so than trying to use him to confuse the leftists and the Marxists and the corruption and all those kinds of things. He's also the Creator's way of trying to provoke you and me as his people to wake up, to stand up for what is righteous, to fight for what is righteous, to contend for the kingdom of heaven. We may have this one last opportunity. We do not let it go. We don't need to let it slip through our fingers. We need to leave everything on the field, so to speak. Don't hold anything back. So anyway, I've got a little long-winded there, but
no,
that's what I see things.
I also see things too as, with this move from Turkey and Syria and President Trump moving the troops out of there. And now we've turned our attention to Saudi Arabia. I see that as part of fulfilling Bible prophecy. I really do. It opened up more, of Syria to be kind of continuing to allow people to move in and do what they want to do. Not that that little section that we had has made all that big of a difference. It didn't, but it just sets the stage. And it also sets the stage for that we are, as President Trump said, we're going to turn our attention to where our interests are. And we're not just going to get into every war. And at the end times, at the very end days, Saudi Arabia is going to protest and say, why are you attacking Israel over here? Meaning whoever is coming in, Turkey, or I think, my opinion, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, just keep naming them on and on. They're more anti-Israel than they are pro-Israel, let's say. Maybe they're not going to agree to allow the United States to come in and do anything, which is biblical prophecy. We're not supposed to be there anyway.
Well, let me say this. You and I have our agenda, and we have our way we feel things should go, how we prefer them to be. For instance, I'm kind of disappointed that Netanyahu wasn't able to hold on to power. It's still, kind of up in the air right now. But look, I'm not God. I don't know what going on. He's got everything under control. So things happen that sometimes don't go along with my agenda necessarily, but I have to say, we need his purposes to be fulfilled. And sometimes his purposes don't make me feel good. Sometimes what he has in store really doesn't work well for my lifestyle. And so my choice is to, get on board with his purpose or hold on to what I think things should be, and I'm going to have a very frustrated life. So, I'm relating that idea to what Trump is doing as far as the call on Syria, the call on Saudi Arabia. Look, if God put him in that position, it's not that he is a puppet. It's just that God is going to use him to do certain things that are going to serve God's purposes, just like I believe he did with Obama. Even though I did not like most of what Obama did, it nevertheless, somehow or the other, will serve and has served God's purposes. If nothing else, than just to get you and me and others to wake up and realize how close we came to losing this nation, how close we are to losing this nation. So everything serves God's purpose. So here's where I'm going with this. Nebuchadnezzar is a guy who destroyed Jerusalem. He destroyed the temple. He took temple treasures all back into Babylon. He took Daniel and Shadrach, and we'll just have to see how these things take shape, because it might be that, the Father is influencing him and prodding him to do certain things that maybe don't appeal to some, but it's setting the stage for what God's getting ready to do. I believe that. I believe that.
Now, Gail said we need to be strong and of good courage and fear not, but increase in faith, the substance of things hoped and evidence of things not seen yet. Darlene Dine said, woke me up for sure. Cheryl Cobb said, God raised up Pharaoh. And, it's absolutely true. I mean, with all the things that are happening with Iran right now and with Israel and all that right now, that, Israel's not afraid, but concerned that Iran is creating missiles over in Tehran, and that Iran is now moving missiles to Yemen to be fired upon to fire upon Israel, and that these are such sophisticated weapons that it could be come within several just a few meters of getting really attacking Israel and hitting Israel. Now Netanyahu warned that he said to Mnuchin, the United States Treasury Secretary, the other day. He said, Iran is seeking to develop new precision-guided munitions, missiles that can hit any target in the Middle East with a circumference of 5 to 10 meters. They are developing this in Iran. They said they want to place them in Iraq and in Syria, and to convert Lebanon's arsenal of 130,000 imprecise rockets to precision-guided munitions. They seek also to develop that and have already begun to put that in Yemen with the goal of reaching Israel from there too. Are we about to see a war going on with Israel and Iran? Because Israel said, we're going to stop Iran wherever we find them doing things that could harm us.
And whether Gantz is, in the midst of forming a government or not, even with those uncertainties, Israel is not going to sit back and let Iran do whatever they want to do. I don't think so, anyway.
No, they're not.
So, yeah. Iran's going to put, the mullahs in Iran are going to keep pushing this, because they have this mentality, they have this religious fervor that they need to create chaos, because if they create the chaos, then the 12th Imam is going to emerge.
The Mahdi.
Right.
Yes.
And basically Al-Mahdi, or the 12th Imam, is, I'm convinced anyway, is what the Bible calls the Antichrist. And I'm convinced of it. So they want to create chaos. And so isn't it interesting that all of those people who we view as godless are the ones that are creating chaos? And why are they creating the chaos? Because, at least on the Iranian side, they want somebody to emerge. I guarantee you that Schiff and Pelosi and Nadler and all these people, I'm not saying they're looking for the 12th Imam, but they're trying to create chaos because they want someone else to emerge too. And so the mentalities are merging. The worldview may be a little different, but the mentality, the mindset is merging, and it's all setting the stage for what we've read about in Scripture all of our lives. And so in the middle of all this, I'm almost starting to wonder if we're starting to see the embryonic stages of when the adversary is cast down from heaven to the earth and he's mad because he knows he only has a short time. I'm not going to be dogmatic about that. I'm just kind of wondering that right now. It's and there's more to come. And Iran is part of that coalition that wants to come in and invade the mountains of Israel, but the God of Israel stops them.
Yeah, I just, I just feel that we are so closer than ever of having Isaiah 17 and Ezekiel 38, 39, and all that come to pass. Because I mean, it's, God told us, I'm going to tell you these things so you can look for them. That you're not going to be surprised. We're supposed to, as believers, that we know what's coming because the Bible tells us what's coming. And we're watching everything just kind of fall into place. Now, is this it? I don't know. But I'm just saying, looking at it, it's falling into place for now anyway.
Well, we can say this with confidence, that we're taking another step toward those things. The stage is being set. Just this, the Syria situation, I mean, that this is still going on. It's still an ongoing thing. There's still civil war. There's still unrest in there. And, Trump is pulling back somewhat in some areas because he doesn't want to put our men and women in harm's way. Of course, the Russians and others are going to try to.
And that's interesting in and of itself. John or Evelyn Gonzalez said that, Shalom, you've confirmed many things I've been thinking. Yes, God is in control. Psalm 135. NC said, remember the prophecy of Ezekiel 38 and Isaiah 17 and are on a verge of being fulfilled. Look up, guys, and see our redemption draws nigh. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting in the next few years or less about what Israel is going to do, because while Israel is going in every now and then and attacking different munitions centers and all that in Syria, if they feel that Iran is doing this someplace else, they're really going to, I think, up their game, and it's going to be something that we see more of
Well, I won't pretend to know exactly how this is all going to, unfold. I will tell you that I keep expecting that there is a war before the war of Ezekiel 38:9. That's just my personal opinion. I think there's another war first, which might be the trigger for the bigger war, but the war is about the whole Palestinian issue, the whole Edom and Ishmael conspiring together to come against Israel, and this thing that's going on in Syria right now may very well play a role in that. And and I'm not saying that is the way it's going to be. It's just something I've always looked for. That there's this war that's described in Ezekiel before the war in Ezekiel 38 and 9, as far as I'm concerned. So we just every week another piece of the puzzle falls into place. I don't doubt that there'll be some more developments here in the next few days.
Some people think that it's Damascus, the destruction of Damascus, that triggers Ezekiel 38 and 39.
Well, I would of Magog to come into the mountains of Israel with this confederacy of nations. We're speculating here, folks. We don't know for certain. And prophecy teachers have been speculating for hundreds of years about this. But as we get closer, we see how things could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Ernest, Freedom Lover, said we are in that war now. And Dawn said that she has an Orthodox Jew as a friend on Facebook. She was shocked to read their thread, which they had written in Hebrew to one another, and that had mentioned Gog and Magog were the Muslims. Never heard that before. I've never heard that before, but
well,
I mean, I've heard that was Russia, Gog and Magog. I mean, I've heard that. I've never heard they were specifically Muslims. Maybe indirectly there would be Muslims, but.
Well, we need to keep something in mind that, and this was particularly true before the breakup of the Soviet Union, but a lot of the Soviet Union was Muslim. I mean, all these different provinces of the Soviet Union was Muslim, and so there's a lot of Muslims in the well, I shouldn't say that, in the Russian army now. There's still a lot of that. When Titus and the 10th Roman Legion destroyed Jerusalem back in 70 A.D., the 10th Roman Legion was actually comprised of Muslims, or not Muslims, but Arab people. So there is a thread in the Jewish world, eschatologically speaking, that they see the sons of Ishmael, they see Edom as the primary antagonist of Israel, not necessarily Vladimir Putin.
Now we are kind of really short, so we'll make this last topic a lot shorter than we were going to.
Sorry, I got long-winded.
No. That I putting this last topic in here because I said we were going to talk about it. It's the only reason I'm not ending where we are, because I think it's been great what we've been talking about. But thing dry laying around that you put a match on and it just explodes. Not saying that's how the fire started, but that's just an example that I'm giving. We have Northern California is basically on fire. If you want to look at it, the Kincaid fire. It burned an area that's more than twice the size of San Francisco. If you've ever been to San Francisco, it's a large city. It's destroyed nearly 60 homes there. The Southern California fire, the Getty fire, they're expecting about 80 miles per hour in wind gusts. PG&E, the Pacific Gas and Electric that runs everything, the gas and electricity, are thinking about maybe cutting electricity to nearly 4 million people. This will be their third time of cutting the electricity. And the two fires in Lafayette that happened on Sunday, they feel now, PG&E feels that it was caused by their own electrical malfunction, because they cut off electricity to 2.5 million people, but they didn't cut off electricity in the area where the fire started because they didn't think it was high risk. So long story short, people are starting to talk about microgrids and things of that nature, and we don't have a lot of time to get into that. But if you look at it, we have a lot of transmitters that are kind of like in one place, or you have one center where everything is run out of for your gas and electricity, turning that off, and who makes that decision to shut down the grids and things of that nature. There are people that have solar powered microgrids and other type of grids. And now California is looking in 2011 that suggested that we have microgrids all across the world. To me, it's just sort of another indication in some way, maybe an indirect way, of the one world government. Everybody's the same, the climate change push where we kind of get everybody together on this one idea. And now we're talking about microgrids, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about that on another time, about why that might not be such a good thing, because it will allow sort of more control over what your electricity and your gas than ever before, because we'll specifically go into your neighborhood, we'll turn you off, we'll turn you on over here because you may need it, we don't feel that you need it. There's more control for the elitists to have, the globalists to have, to control what you do, what you eat, how you warm yourself, and things of that nature.
Well, so that someone could say you can't buy or sell unless you conform to a certain way of thinking and belief system.
Exactly.
I don't really know a lot about that, honestly, but I do believe that California is kind of the lab experiment for a lot of one world government and globalists and and just elitists and those things. So, and look at the chaos that is reigning now in California.
Total chaos.
It is chaotic. We do need to pray for the people in California. California is the brunt of a lot of jokes, and so we need to pray for those people. I keep thinking that maybe one day, the people in California, the others that keep these people in power, will wake up and realize, well, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Who knows? Maybe that's what's going on right now. Maybe the Creator's just kind of making it obvious. Is this what you want? This is, if you keep putting these kind of people in office, this is what you're going to keep getting. So who knows? But in the meantime, we need to pray for people who are in harm's way. Even people that we don't particularly care for their ideologies and worldview. They're a human being. God breathed the breath of life into them too, and we need to pray for their well-being, and maybe they'll come to their senses. So, as far as the issue of the power.
Absolutely ridiculous governor. He's the most liberal governor. He was more liberal than Jerry Brown. He's totally into climate change. Yeah, and that's
saying a lot.
That's saying a lot.
Yeah.
So we're trying desperately to get him out. So pray that goes through, and that he's we can get somebody with a little bit of sanity. Right now, there was a picture of him the other day, and I wish I had it to show you, but it was a picture, you could see his back, and he was just standing there. You could see him going like this, and you knew, and the caption was like, here's a guy that doesn't even know what to do. He has no idea of looking at all this devastation from the fires in California. What do I do now?
Years ago, I was speaking out in the San Joaquin Valley, and I had visited that area several times over the last decade or two, and it used to be lush and green and fruit trees everywhere, and dairy farms and this and that. And one of the last times I went there, it was just a dust bowl, and all because of a little fish that wasn't even indigenous to Northern California or the Bay Area, but because of one little fish, they didn't want to mess him up, and they cut off water, all these farmers in the San Joaquin Valley. So that's the kind of mentality that's been reigning in California for a long time, and now we're just seeing the outcome.
On Omar's and the Ayanna Presley's look like children at the game. I mean, that's how bad it is, So.
And at the same time, you can go up into the Sierras and you can find good old boys up there.
Yeah. Big extremes. But anyway, please pray for California. Pray for our country. Pray for the protection of this president. Pray for our administration. As the spiritual battle increases, we need to increase the time we spend, as Bill was saying, on our knees in front of God. And that's Periscope, and find the
and BillCloud.com.
And the replay there, and BillCloud.com, because it's all there, and it will probably look just fine. It just, sometimes when it's going out, streaming out, something happens, and it's not from our connections. It's just the way it is. So anyway, until next time, God bless you. Take care, and we'll see you then.